Oh, by the way. Oh, didn't see you there. Hey, before we do anything, let's just let's do an intro, eh? Hey, look, sorry, I know there's more glare than a solar eclipse sighting without the appropriate eyewear. Now, in this obtutorial, which is really a tutorial with an objective, obtutorial, what we've got here, the content really is an introduction to the basic use and approach, emphasis on approach of how to use a handsaw. It's broken down into core components. Those components are the safety considerations, the securing of the cutting material, the selection of the handsaw, the body position, the initial incision, plus the trajectory of the blade itself, to finish with the motion of the ocean, the soaring motion. Hey look, it's a necessary subject, safety. Using a handsaw, the main thing is just getting your clothes caught, I think. So just tuck it in. And I've got a wee apron here. It's fantastic. I love it. I love it. There's a lot going for it. Got this today from Free Set. And it is very cool. Whip that on. The other thing I think, I'd recommend wearing are safety glasses. Because if you get dust in your eye, it's flippin' annoying and it can be a little difficult to get out. So to minimise that risk, it doesn't completely eliminate it, but it does minimise it. Pop some safety glasses on, and then at least you sort of game, set, match. And the thing is, once you approach a task with safety in mind, you're focused on the job and you've actually got a much higher chance of doing the job well. And doing it to the best of your ability and potential, which is what we're about. Which is what we're about here at Upskill. Next thing we'll do is securing the material. Securing. Oh, golly gosh, maybe half an tap. Hey, securing your material, it's a fundamental thing, because if the material that you're cutting, say this piece of timber here, is moving all around, it compromises your focus to two things, and then you end up doing a poor job of something that could have been done really well had you actually just taken the time to get it secure. And your work often is only as good as the platform you do it on. So if you've got this piece of timber here nice and secured down, you don't have to worry about it slipping around, because you've taken care of that, and then you can actually shift your focus to that task of cutting that piece of timber down to a specific measurement. And obviously there's plenty of ways, and most of the time you don't need to explain how, but we may as well since we're here. Some clamps are always a good time. I like the height of the sawhorse actually, because you can actually get over it, and we'll talk a little bit more about that in the body position section. But you can actually get over it and like use your body's position to manhandle that saw, but not to that point where you're working it really hard. It's just you get yourself in that optimum position, and that's 733 millimeters off the ground on a 12-degree angle. So if you just get out simple Pythagoras, you've got to figure that one out in terms of vertical elevation. Now, what we also need to think about is, what if you don't have any of this stuff? You can saw off the ground, just make sure that the end of the timber is elevated enough that the saw can do its thing without smashing into the ground and potentially blunting the blades like James Blunt. Look, that's cool. We'll move on to the selection of the handsaw. Happy days. Happy days. Whew, that's a buttery shot if I ever saw one. Look at that. Some beautiful grain there. This is the end grain of a piece of timber that's just been cut off at a particular point. Now, grain that's neither going forward nor back, it's actually called neutral grain, and you can eat it. It's a common cereal found in Australia and New Zealand. However, I think that's irrelevant. Handsaw selection. So, in this particular task, we're really approaching it from a basic, fundamental perspective, and we're cutting across the grain, as opposed to cutting with the grain, which is the length of the timber. And if you just think of a tree, you got the tree trunk here, going upwards generally, I guess. How does it know to grow upwards? That's the thing I want to know. But anyway, nature's amazing. You cut across it, that's cross grain. And then a rip, or I guess a rip cut is running with the grain, so like running from top to bottom of the tree as opposed to across. So in terms of selection of handsaw, we're going for a cross-cut saw. There are plenty of different types of saws out there, and I think that will be another session, to be fair. If in doubt, one, know what the material is that you're using, and if you don't know where to go from there, if at least you've got that bit of information, you can go into the local DIY store or hardware store and just explain what you're intending to do, and they'll be able to guide you for sure on what the correct saw is for that particular job. But yeah, I'd just sort of go off that provision, and then you shouldn't be too far wrong. But today we're cutting across the grain, so we're using a cross-cut saw, which is a very common saw. Yeah, so that's that. Body position. Look, I realise we haven't even pulled up the handsaw yet. We haven't even held it as a team. Here it is. Body position is key again to delivering the goods. What is a good body position? This. Up above. No. Jokes. Basically what you want to be is over top of the material. You want to bend your knees a little bit, have a straight back, just even arch it a little bit, like you're doing a deadlift or a seated row. And when you're pushing and pulling, just like a seated row, except you're not seated and I guess you're not rowing, you kind of get that good position. And it's a good workout on your legs. And you just engage your core. And then you may even get like a little bit of a rotate going on that lower lumbar. Just really rotate that lower lumbar. So get in there. Secondly, where to actually align yourself with. Alignment, again, is another key aspect. So say the mark is here. Where do I position myself? I like to get my shoulder in line with the mark that I have measured and marked. And that just puts me in a favourable position because it's the path of least resistance. I don't need to be out here sort of trying to maintain some sort of composure when I could just be here, and I've just got a nice straight linear motion, and I've got that bent back, and I'm over top of the timber. So yeah, you get in there, you just really rip into it. So cutty, and yeah, and you just. I think that's essentially it. It's just, key takeaway would be aligning your cutting shoulder with the mark. So it's a nice straight cut. Just want to reiterate that and take it home. It's just a nice straight cut. And you find what works for you. Like right now I've actually adopted a natural position, like I'm ready for something. As opposed to being like this. So maybe it is a bit like that. You find what works for you, but I think having bent knees and an arched back better than being hunched over like this, because you lose a lot of energy. And then in terms of, actually I'll zoom in on this, wait there. Just remember when you are cutting, make sure that the waste side of the material is actually on the outside of the support. If you cut in the middle here, it's not good practice to cut through the centre, because if you're using a power tool, maybe not so much a handsaw, but it will pinch. And when you're using a skill saw, it pinches very dangerous. So make sure the cut side is over here. So I know it's still sheathed up for good reason. Just focus on my hand here. So it's funny how you just end up holding it a certain way, and this is how I ended up holding it, with my index finger sort of on the outside. It's just a natural grip. I don't think you need to overthink this one, but it does help having this finger on the outside and the thumb on top, just with stability of the saw, because when it's here, I guess it can wiggle around a lot more than with this finger here, and that just gives it some guidance, especially when it comes to starting the blade off, which we're going to talk about next. Within the initial incision and trajectory section. Coming right up. You guys are probably wondering what we're looking at here. Now what we're looking at is Elon Musk's SpaceX program. This is Falcon Heavy right here. The most powerful rocket in the world as of 6th of February 2018. And then this is his Roadster, the Tesla Roadster, which was the payload for this particular maiden voyage of Falcon Heavy. The Roadster was represented through this little pinhole here. And the illustration here is directory. It's all about directory. Sorry, trajectory. Essentially, it's summed up by Harry Styles, Liam Payne. This Roadster, it's heading in one direction, and one direction only. Only reason it would change is that there is some external force, like a meteorite shower, or a meteor belt, or Jupiter's moons. The blade of the handsaw to be doing. We want it to be heading in one direction, but we also want it to be heading in the correct direction. So it's kind of two things in one. If this was aimed towards Mars, it's going to hit Mars, but if it's 2 degrees off, it's going to miss Mars. So to bring it back to Mars from a 2-degree deviation will mean that there's some sort of arc, happening. And when cutting with a handsaw, you probably want to have a nice square cut. So knowing what you're aiming for, plus setting up your blade with the correct trajectory, which we'll explain in this next little segment, is something to keep in mind, and it helps you stay on track, stay the course. Key component. Cheers. So this is the last part of this tutorial, bringing in everything that we've talked about. This here has been marked square on the top and down the sides. Now with regards to trajectory, we will demonstrate that right now. To start the initial incision, this is how you do it. Find the mark. I want to keep this side of the timber, so I'm cutting to that side of the mark. Often helpful to mark it with an X. That's the waste side. Pop the saw in there, find that very specific point which is on the line, and have the blade near the top, near the handle, and I use my thumb to guide it. The initial incision is achieved through a draw stroke. A draw stroke being that you're pulling it towards you like a seated row, and you're pulling those weights. You're retracting your biceps. So as I pull here, I'm starting it. Just started it. Now that's not enough. I need to do it again. That's starting to get a wee groove there. We're getting our groove on. See that groove's just beginning? And I'm pretty happy with that, but I still need my nail to guide it. Now just watch your fingers. This is a situation where your hands are actually very close to these things here, which can cut you. Essentially they cut through timber, so they'll cut through you. So be very careful of this. If you wanted to try this just to get used to what handsawing's like, and you're not confident in yourself yet, I'd have your hand over here and just get used to sawing. But if you want to take that to the next level, I get your thumb here and use that as a guide. So I'm drawing, I'm calling this the initial incision critical factor. And now I reckon I can actually do a draw and a push stroke. Now, I'm just assessing that as to whether this is half on the line on the top, but trajectory is really the angle of this blade here. I want it to be square, I want it to be plumb, I want it to be vertically level. And I can monitor that through sight, what looks right, and just down the side here. It's starting to feel good. So I can see that I need to angle the blade very slightly back this way, and now I'm on form. That's cool. So I've made 20% of my cut here, and it's pretty hard to deviate from this trajectory. So this trajectory is established, essentially. It can move, but you're not going to get a square cut from that point onwards. So if your trajectory is correct, the rest is pretty easy. We're just applying what we talked about in the previous sections of this tutorial. So it's good body position over top of the timber and just those nice strokes. For the sake of this aspect here, I'll just move this camera just a little bit. I have clamped it to the bench, but usually I'd be a little lower to the ground. But yeah, mate. The saw cuts going both backwards and forwards, so you want to get as much purchase as possible, but without having the blade pop off. Happy days. So that to me, you can still see half the line there, which is exactly what you want. And on my side here, although you can't see it, half the line is there and it's square across the top, which means the whole thing's square. That's the ultimate objective. That's hand sawing. Thanks for watching.